Hey, we are starting term 3 and we'll be a few weeks into this when this releases, but one thing I saw was all the outdoor suggestions. And so I was looking at the outdoor suggestions from Mason's volume, Home Education, her volume on home education. And this is stuff she would encourage you to do with any child under 6 even. And this is why I tend to look for kindergarten curriculum in general, just to keep me mindful that is Charlotte Mason, leaning. Anyways, I'm sure if you want to go and look at my curriculum choices for that, you can. But anyways, so some of the things she recommends: climbing, skipping rope, shuttlecock, seasonal investigations, special studies investigations, sightseeing, picture painting, object lessons, bird stalking, geography lessons. Part of geography lessons is like the position of the sun and weather and figuring out how to measure by pacing, doing directions, compass drills, boundaries, drawing plans, local geography. Anyways, it's a lot, right? And so I wrote down the list of all the things we're supposed to do. And then I tried to space them out: day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4, so that I had 4 days across for each of them. And so that I was generally trying to rotate through them. And then in my morning time little sheet, I'm sticking these extra sheets, which might become more formal, but they don't need to be. That's the point, right? So for day 1, I had general investigations. So looking at lakes and rivers and certain walks and views and wildflowers and birds and whatever the season has to hold that you're out just exploring. And so that is where I wanted to focus on our study of our 6 trees, because every year you're supposed to be looking and watching 6 trees that are around. And so we're picking 6 trees in our yard that we did our twigs on. And now we're going to enjoy them as we go through our walk. So one thing we've noticed is the elm had its flower buds and they are now expanding and getting bigger. We also had picture painting, and Mason talks about picture painting in her thing and looking at a patch of landscape and closing your eyes and trying to describe it. And can you do that? I don't think I can do that. And so I'm going to even be practicing this skill. But if it's not a perfect picture, you're then to open your eyes and look again and take it in and close your eyes again and then describe what you see. And they do say that mom describing picture paintings in her mind helps the kids, but also pointing out things that your kids are to notice, right? This is what is in Mason's volume. And she said, this is very hard work. And so you should only be doing this for like 15 minutes every now and then. Like, it's not a huge thing. It's not every day, because it's a lot of mental energy to do this. As far as geography lessons, I actually think the geography lessons are pretty well broken out in my things, because she talks about the position of the sun compared to the time of day, pacing, the weather, being able to do distance based on time eventually, based on how long it takes you to walk, shadows, wind, the compass drills. And so those I kind of have all broken out in separate days. But then local geography, drawing out any local landforms and being able to sketch it out in the dirt or in a sand, like a sandbox or a tray of sand or whatever. She talks about drawing it in a stick, with a stick and dirt. And so those are the kinds of ideas of doing local geography, as well as going out and actually seeing the different local stuff that you have. Like, we have a bluff that's kind of near here. We have creeks and ponds and lakes. And so we go to a couple different areas like that. And so for our local geography, we may not get out to do something like that each time, but we could be practicing forming landforms outside in our sandbox too, is a great thing we can do. We've done that before and really enjoy that. And then the other thing of climbing trees and we don't have any good climbing trees. And I was like, oh, that kind of stinks. But there's something to being able to do that. So we do have monkey bars, and we'll get out and do those. We have our climbing structure, like our playground, and so they can climb up that, but also working on learning how to climb a tree, how to scale a tree, you know, jumping up and grabbing on it. My kids are little, so they're not really good at this yet, and that's okay. But these are some of the things we need to be thinking about when we are going outside. So that was our day 1. For our day 2, we've looked at seasonal investigations, bird stalking, position of the sun, weather, and sightseeing. And those are the ones I'm going to focus on day 2. So seasonal investigation is just, I've been reading a naturalist book that goes with the season. Well, what are some seasonal things that we're noticing? Different animals that are back, different animals that are out, the birds that are flying through, birds stalking. My daughter loves stalking robins because they just will wait and wait and wait and wait until that very last second to fly off. So they're a great one to stalk. The position of the sun, go out at different times of day. Where is the sun? Is it in the east? Is it in the west? Is it up straight? Where is it? You know, and what time of day is it? What's the weather like today? Well, it was pouring 2 seconds ago and now it's dying down, you know, like noticing the weather. And then the sightseeing is another one she describes where you're honing in on one little thing and you're paying really close attention. So the picture painting is more of a landscape. The sightseeing is like we're looking specifically at a targeted item and trying to take in as much as we can of that item. And then for day 3, we'll have our special studies investigation, our object lesson, and then skip rope. And so with the special studies, we are doing amphibians this year. And then for our object lesson, it'll probably be something I'm reading in my naturalist book because I don't read a lot more than that at this point for nature study and stuff. Now, it could be something I learned about a tree or a bird or whatever if I want it to be, but generally my object lesson is going to probably come from my nature study or my naturalist book that I'm reading, which right now is Countryside Rambles, in case anyone cares. And then day 4, I have figure out how to measure by pacing, doing direction, compass drills, boundaries, and drawing plans. So that's all like pretty geography based. And then we'll play games outside. So, cause she's got shuttlecock. And so we might play like go run around and kick the soccer ball, or we might go and throw a football or bounce a basketball and just like learn some of these basic, like good skills that my kids are extremely lacking because I'm not very sports oriented. But I do think it is good for them to go out and move their bodies in these ways, and so did Mason. And so those are the different things that I have for each of the days, as well as our scouting. But for scouting, we are taking that one day at a time. There is a lot to the nature scouting. And so, but that is something that we're able to hit alongside our outdoor time because a lot of it recording the tree changes, you know, studying the grass and rushes, you know, parts of a flower, collecting and naming grasses, nature notebooks daily, and, you know, all these things. And they're great items to be focusing on, but adding those into our outdoor rotation has been fun. So we are slowly working to implement all these things. And my kids have been loving getting outside. Usually we do our morning basket and then they go outside without me. And unless if we have some good time in the morning, then I'll go out with them and then we'll do the walk or whatever. But if it's only like half hour or something before lunch, then I'm inside making lunch and they're out playing and they have a great time together. And then when we get done with my oldest and her school day, usually my middle is awake. And so us 3 may go out for a little bit while the toddler sleeps, or we wait until he gets up and then we all go outside. And so my 2 are outside right now running around playing in rain suits and dumping all the water all the places and having a great time of it. And so these are things to embrace, right? And getting outdoors is important, but sometimes we always think like, oh, well, what are we supposed to do outside for all these times? Miss Mason had a lot to say about what you are supposed to do. In case you're wondering, I should have looked up the pages for sure before I started talking. Okay, out of door life is part 2. So she talks about meals outdoors, starting on page 42 of her Home Education Volume 1, and it goes all the way through page 95. And so there is so much in this about nature. And so I always laugh when people say, well, Miss Mason says no formal lessons before age 6. Yes, she does. And she also expects you to be doing foreign language out of doors and all of these things with your kids who are under 6. And so it's a pretty big undertaking, but I think it's like really beautiful when you can actually start implementing it. But yes, also doing it with your older children is important too, right? Because it's developing lots of skills of attention and observation and all these, like the main 3, right? She talks about how this helps truthfulness in being able to accurately describe something, their attention to the detail they're paying, and their obedience to going out and doing it and doing their best work and the integrity that comes with it. And so there's like a lot of habit character building that happens out of doors as well. So anyways, that's what we are currently starting to implement, is our out of door time to be a little bit more scheduled, just so that I'm making sure we're hitting these different things, because I really realized I can avoid a compass drill all day. And so I went back, I reread this section in Mason's volume, and I was inspired. And so we will be getting out of doors and continuing to work at our different things to do outdoors, and hope you can too. What are some of your favorite things to do outdoors? Right, I should do the whole plug, like you should like and subscribe to the video, but if you like them, do it. If you don't, don't. Have a good one.